Good morning. I want to go ahead and call the joint Missoula City Council and Missoula Board of County Commissioners meeting to order. We have a few ceremonial pieces that we move forward with, but I want to start by saying that this is the morning after a tense and challenging election in our country, and I have been saying this leading up to this, and I want to say this morning, that we are Missoulians that will continue to work together and do great work, and that if there is nothing else that comes out of a challenging situation, it is that the best of us comes forward, that we continue to work together, and that we continue to be kind and patient. The thing about local government, both city and counties, is that action takes place here, and that we are the guardrails of democracy, and we will continue to be that, and that we will continue to do excellent work, and the conversation that we're going to have this morning in this joint public hearing is a great example of that. So thank you for being here. I'm looking forward to this discussion. And with that, I'd like to call for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. Thank you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. And then I'd like to turn it over to County Commissioner Chair, Mr. Strohmeyer, to lead us in the land acknowledgement, please.
Yes, so I would also like to call this meeting to order on behalf of the Missoula Board of County Commissioners for this special meeting, and also acknowledge that this event today takes place in the Aboriginal territories of the Salish and Kalispel people.
Thank you very much. All right. Ms. Trimble, so the Missoula City Council meeting has been called to order. Board of County Commissioners meeting has been called to order. And Ms. Trimble, would you go ahead and do a roll call for attendance, please?
Happy to. Good morning, everyone. Anderson? Absent? Becerra? Absent? Campbell?
Here.
Carlino? Absent? Farmer?
Present.
Jones?
Present.
Jordan? Absent? Nelson? Absent? Nugent?
Present.
Savage?
Present.
Cheryl?
Present.
Basika?
Present.
All right, and I believe we do have a quorum, but I'm going to double check.
Great. I believe we do too, but I'll wait for you to double check that.
Yes, we're good.
You're just coming? Great. All right, wonderful. Thank you. And I do believe as we speak, there's a little bit of an echo in the room. City Councilor Mirta Becerra is present. We have a little bit of echo. I think we're...
That might be Commissioner Strohmeyer's mic.
Nope, okay. Good morning. All right. And I'm sorry if I confuse things with the echo there. Mirta Becerra, Councilor Becerra is here for the record, please. Oh, and Councilor Jordan. Thank you. Councilor Jordan is online. Okay. Now we most definitely have a quorum. Okay, wonderful. Well, we're going to go ahead and get started with this public hearing. Again, this is a joint public hearing, and we will start with a staff presentation for this agenda item. And that I'm going to get up make sure I've got the right folks that are coming to the stage here. The computer's a little slow this morning. All right. So we have the Inderland Conservation Easement Joint City-County Open Space Project, and Zach Covington is here to provide the staff presentation. Good morning, Mr. Covington. Good morning. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody, for the opportunity to present this project to you. So as a reminder for the general public that's attending. This is a public hearing to discuss the Inderland Laval Creek Conservation Easement Open Space Project. And this project would be utilizing 2018 open space bond funds if approved as part of the city and county portions. And that 2018 open space bond was approved via ballot initiative in November of 2018. And eligible project types include conserving, enjoying, and enhancing open space land, to include providing public access to water and land, conserving agricultural lands, fish and wildlife habitat, and rivers, lakes, and streams, protecting scenic views, and making improvements to lands acquired or designated as open space that are accessible by the public by purchasing land, easements, or other interests in land from willing landowners, and paying for improvements and costs related to or serving lands acquired or designated as open space. So I think we've got a couple of people that are going to be presenting, and I'll just allow them to introduce themselves as they come up. My name is Zach Covington. I'm the Open Space Program Manager for the city in the Department of Parks and Recreation. The city and county staff both wanted to take a minute to kind of talk a little bit about the vetting processes through each of the open space committees. And so in general, I just wanted to go over what the Open Space Advisory Committee talked about and why they support the project, and then Kaylee can take some time on the county side. So we always vet open space projects through the whether or not it complies with and supports the Open Space Plan 2019 Urban Area Open Space Plan, and how it complies and is in alignment with city ordinances and state code related to open space, and also the Open Space Advisory Committee's bylaws. And so just so you know, there's been a lot of background work in that sense on the city side. The Open Space Advisory Committee unanimously voted to recommend the use of open space bond funds for this project. And the general consensus was that this project is really what OSAC kind of thinks of. I shouldn't say dreams of, but this is something they were pretty excited about, because it's a very large tract of land with a very high amount of leveraged funds. And so this is something that they were very supportive of, especially with county partnership on the project. It's a large acreage project. It protects local views and vistas, critical wildlife habitat, protects local agriculture. It's within the wildland-urban interface and adjacent to the U.S. Forest Service lands. It's a Fish, Wildlife, and Parks Tier 1 focal area for wildlife. And it's within one of the open space cornerstones documented in the 2019 Missoula Urban Area Open Space Plan. And as I mentioned, there's a high amount of leveraged funds, with only 13% requested coming from the city administered open space bond funds. And again, enthusiastic consensus for the project overall. So I'll turn the time over to others, and they will introduce themselves as they come up.
Thank you very much, Zach. Good morning.
Good morning. Excuse me, council members, mayor, and county commissioners. Kaylee Becker. I'm the Missoula County Open Lands Project Manager. So I'm just going to go over a few points around the county review and process for this open space bond project. So as background, the project lies near the Missoula Valley Planning Region boundary. And for those of you who may want a little refresher on the interlocal agreement, for the 2018 open space bond, given that that was a countywide bond, there was an interlocal agreement that was reached between the city and county regarding the administration and the use of the open space bond funds. And the reason I mention that is that the Missoula Valley Planning Region was the jurisdictional boundary that was agreed upon in that interlocal agreement, where half of the total funding, which was $15 million, so $7.5 million, was allocated to be spent in the area within the Missoula Valley Planning Region and administered by the city, and then the other half to be spent outside the Missoula Valley Planning Region and administered by the county. So that's why I bring up that jurisdictional boundary. Why that relates to what we're doing today is that because this project is near that boundary, it was deemed to be a good opportunity for a joint project where the city and county jointly put forward funds for the project. So that is that piece there, why it was designated as a joint project. And for that reason, we also follow a slightly separate but parallel process that's outlined in that interlocal agreement specific to joint projects. So with that, there was a joint OLC, that's the Open Lands Committee, that's the county committee, along with the city's Open Space Advisory Committee. They met jointly and had a site visit that was held on April 2nd. And then they had a joint meeting that was held on April 11th of this year, where they each took their separate votes. And OLC unanimously recommended to the requested amount of funding be approved. And there is an OLC representative who can present that today. Per just OLC discussion and their evaluation project, or evaluation for the project, they ranked it high in terms of wildlife habitat, native plants, agricultural lands, and scenic aesthetic values. And per staff review, the proposed project is a qualified project that meets the purposes, multiple purposes of the open space bond. So with that brief description there, I will hand it over to the project representative from Five Valleys Land Trust to go more in depth about the project. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Becker. All right, come on up.
Hi there, I'm Whitney Schwab. I'm the Executive Director of Five Valleys Land Trust. And before we get into project specifics, I just wanted to take a moment to talk about the Five Valleys process. Many of you who have been involved with that at various times as community citizens, and all of us who benefit from it as community members. And so over 52 years, we played a role in Missoula and beyond to help support and implement the community's vision for what helps make Missoula a great place to live. In the face of our expanding growth, this role is more important than ever to ensure that we're responding to the community needs of today while we're looking ahead to preserve what we want our vibrancy to be like 20 years from now and into the next generations. I shared a picture, and let's see if I can share the PowerPoint and talk at the same time. There we go. I'm sharing this picture of Mount Dean Stone in the South Hills to kind of illustrate the process of how we work. And so together alongside our community members in passing the open space bond, part of that effort really helps support getting the Mount Dean Stone Preserve and corridor and trails established. Many of us enjoy that today. But I think what may be a lesser known story is the work that went in behind that for the many years prior with private landowners to even be able to reach that point. And so some of our landowners who hold private conservation easements on the South Hills and Dean Stone landscape, which preserves significant view sheds, significant wildlife habitat along this wildland urban interface, where there's no secret, this is where a lot of our development is happening, as it should, close into city services. But some of these folks remember when this was outside of town. They grew up with this being outside of town, and that's the way town has grown. And that work that they had to protect these areas and also create these oases alongside the community growth to make it a good place to live, work, and play has continued to build into what brought those private landowners together to help create the opportunity for the public acquisitions that has allowed for the community open space and the trails on Mount Dean Stone. You know, and I hear this picture is taken from the North Hills, another area that our forebearers thought should be protected for community enjoyment and wildlife habitat and scenic view sheds. And you can look across and see the South Hills. And while the Indralyn-Lavelle Creek property is not in this view shed, town is rising to meet that. That is where Missoula is headed. There is growth there. And this project creates an opportunity to look into the future and help frame and create the growth that we want and the attributes that we want to keep Missoula the vibrant, wonderful place it is to live well into the future. So today's that opportunity. The opportunity to conserve a landscape happens once. We're really honored and appreciative of the chance to work with the Indralyn family on this and to share further about it with you today.
Thank you very much, Ms. Schwab, and stunning picture. That's beautiful. Thank you for your great work at Five Valleys. Come on up.
Derek Obel, Five Valleys Land Trust, Project Manager. Speak a little bit more about specific project details and answer any project questions you may have. All right, so here in the presentation on the left there is a map showing the project location and its relation to the Missoula Valley in the city of Missoula. Again, this is kind of in the Lavelle Creek, Evero Hills, kind of North Hills area. The gray outlines city property, so it's slightly outside city boundaries, but pretty proximate. And again, we talked about the split request because of its positioning in the Missoula Valley and in relation to the urban area planning boundary. The photo on the right is an aerial photo taken late spring this year. This is on the western property boundary of the property, looking kind of northeast. In the foreground is some of the agricultural irrigated cropland, and then you can see the transition from the grasslands to the forested timberland with Point 6 and Missoula Snow Bowl in the background there. Zooming into the property a little bit more, you can see the entire northern edge of this property is bordered by Lolo National Forest, which connects to CSKT reservation land to the north, and then Rattlesnake Wilderness further to the northeast. Because of its proximity to CSKT reservation land, we have reached out to the tribes and informed them about this project, and their representatives are enthusiastic about the prospect of protecting this property because they've identified it as an important area due to the rich cultural and natural resources in this area. There are other existing conservation easements in this area, including a 160-acre easement just to the south of the property, which is the crosshatched area on the map there. And then further to the west, there's about a 1,000-acre conservation easement held by the Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation. Both of these were about 2010, 2011 projects and were supported by open space bond funding in the past. Lavelle Creek also runs through a portion of the eastern portion of this property. And then you can see on the map, there's been a lot of subdivision development, as Whitney was mentioning, along Highway 93 here that's continued to encroach north and to the western property boundary. But a lot of the land to the south and southeast has remained open and intact and is continued to be used for agricultural purposes. So this is a project, the project type is a conservation easement held by Five Valleys Land Trust. And just to remind folks, a conservation easement is a legally binding agreement between a landowner and a land trust that restricts certain uses of the property to protect its conservation values while still staying in private land ownership. And in this case, those conservation values include protecting agricultural working lands, scenic views and vistas, and staying in and critical wildlife habitat. This will protect approximately 1,660 acres and will perpetually unify those 6 contiguous tax parcels. The landowner, Rory, and his wife Mary, who are here today, will retain full ownership of the property with the right to transfer that property as one contiguous parcel in the future, subject to the terms of that conservation easement. And while there's currently no public access component to this project, which is fairly standard in conservation easements projects, it doesn't necessarily preclude the possibility of any sort of future access. I did want to point out, in cases where public access is part of a conservation easement, it tends to inflate or increase the easement value and project costs and subsequent funding requests also. Because this is a multi-generational family ag operation, the family is requesting a few additional building sites to allow for present and future generations to remain on site there, which are the black crossed-hatched areas on the map. They will be able to select 4 of these 5 potential building locations for no more than 20 acres of developed land, or just over 1% of the property. So this property contains a unique combination of habitat that straddles that wildland-urban interface, including expansive open grasslands along with forested timberlands up to the northeast. This land is used for grass hay production down low in the open area, and then the entire property is used for horse and cattle grazing. Includes about 15 acres of irrigated cropland. That mixed-use land cover provides significant expanse of relatively untouched natural habitat for a wide range of variety of species. The list is too long to provide, but notably, there are plenty of deer, elk, coyote, mountain lion, bear, etc. It also serves as critical winter habitat for the North Hill elk herd, which is pictured in this larger picture, you've got an elk herd in the foreground here, and much of the property is frequented by that elk herd year-round. I also mentioned Lavelle Creek on the eastern edge of the boundary runs through the portion of the property, which that upper Lavelle Creek supports a genetically pure cutthroat native trout population and provides a perennial source of clean, cold water to the Missoula Valley. The Inderland family has a proven history and track record of conservation-minded practices, including installing several miles of wildlife-friendly fencing, which is the picture in the bottom right here. This was a project that was supported with volunteer work through the Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation, and they installed several miles of smooth wire wildlife-friendly fencing and gates adjacent to the property to prevent cattle from moving into those sensitive riparian areas and allow for the safe passage of other wildlife. They've also been pretty active over the past couple of years in managing the forested land through active thinning projects to reduce that wildfire threat in the wildland-urban interface just north of city limits there. In terms of how this project can be viewed through the lens of climate and resilience, the City of Missoula Conservation and Climate Action Plan has identified a number of strategies, including the need to protect our remaining agricultural land from future development. Protection of that riparian habitat along Lavelle Creek will also enhance Missoula's water resources and floodplains so they have the resilience to withstand new pressures imposed by climate change and continue to provide clean water and ecosystem benefits to our community. And then through a conservation easement on this land and preventing large-scale surface disturbance of the grasslands and forest lands will allow us to conserve existing carbon pools in forests, soils, or rangeland vegetation through a host of activities, including in this case land protection. So as Whitney mentioned, this project is part of a greater urban growth strategy that helps lay the foundation for increasing equitable access to community open space as housing expands across the valley floor. And again, while there's currently no public access component to this project, it's this type of linchpin project that lays the foundation for and makes possible a larger network of perpetually connected open space land. Preserving this open space land maintains the region's natural beauty and aligns with the character of Montana as we welcome more residents to the community. And a conservation easement will help an agricultural producer in the Missoula Valley continue to operate. And again, protection here encourages responsible development in higher density near services and transportation. So this property contains significant open space land, which is defined by the Montana's Open Space Land and Voluntary Conservation Act. That open space provides scenic views and vistas from vantages not only throughout the city, but the Missoula Valley. It continues to provide relatively natural habitat for fish, wildlife, and plants, and is consistent with several local and statewide planning policies, including the Missoula County Growth Policy, which aims to manage development and preserve open spaces that define Missoula County. This policy recognizes agriculture as vital to the community for its numerous benefits, including food security, open space, wildlife habitat, economic contribution, and quality of life. It's consistent with the City of Missoula Urban Open Space Plan, which has a vision of connected open space system in the Missoula urban area, which includes lands protected for wildlife habitat and natural resources, parklands, lands protected for historic or scenic values, agricultural lands, and trails. And the plan establishes the goal of conserving natural systems through the purchase and stewardship of lands, conservation easements, and other available tools. And then finally, Zach mentioned this also, that falls within the Montana Fish, Wildlife, and Parks State Action Plan. It falls within the Evero Hill, North Hills Tier 1 terrestrial focal area, which is classified as a Tier 1 priority, meaning that statewide it's recognized as the greatest need for conservation based on the species presence and supports 43 Montana species of concern. So again, protection of this land furthers the goals of not only the city, the county, but also statewide policies amongst others. Just a quick glance at the project budget. So up top is the estimated easement value at $2.5 million. There is also staff time, legal fees, transaction costs associated with the project, bringing the total project cost at 2.6. We at Five Valleys have been working on this project for over 2.5 years, and at this point have worked to secure significant funding for the project, namely through the NRCS Natural Resources Conservation Service Agricultural Easement Program. We applied for funding in late 2022 and we were awarded that funding in mid-2023, which pays for 50% of that estimated easement value at $1.25 million. We've also been successful in securing about a total, so another $500,000 or so, for a total of $1.7 million in public and private money from 3 individual funders, including the NRCS, Yellowstone Yukon, and the Liz Claiborne Foundation. So this last request of $688,000 split equally from the city and county is the final piece that will help fund this project and allow it to succeed. We've been in communication with city and county staff over the past 2 years with the understanding that this open space bond funding is a crucial component of this project budget. So the open space bond request from the city and county comes in at only $413 per acre, which is an outstanding value, especially in light of rising regional land prices. This investment will safeguard a local family-operated agricultural operation that contributes to food security and regional resilience. And by leveraging contributions from 3 other public and private funders, we can achieve lasting conservation and public benefit at a fraction of the total cost of purchasing land. Protecting this property now is a rare, once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to preserve critical open space, sustain working lands, and strengthen our community's ecological and agricultural heritage for our future generations.
Thank you for your presentation, Mr. Goebel.
Thank you.
Appreciate it, and thank you for making yourself available. Any other members of the team here to present before we turn it over to questions? Okay, great. Thank you very much. So we'll bring it back to Board of County Commissioners and City Council, see if anybody has any questions for staff and or members of Five Valleys Land Trust. Yes, Commissioner Slotnick.
Hey, thanks for that great presentation and great work. Super impressive. I was wondering if you could just sort of summarize, restate what you already said, but just a few sentences on that leveraged funding stack. What's the total cost? I know you said it already. I just want to make sure everybody hears this because it's really impressive. What's the total cost? How much came from all the other sources, and what your ask is of us today?
Sure. Yep. Total cost is $2.6 million. We've been successful in securing about 1.7, or nearly 70%. So the remaining ask is $688,000, which is a total of 26%, but split equally between the city and the county is 13% from each one. Yep.
All right, thank you. Councilor Sherrill.
Yeah, thanks, and appreciate the presentation from everyone. And if you said this and I missed it, I apologize. I was up kind of late last night. How long has Five Valleys been working with Enderlin on this easement? I mean, I appreciate Ms. Schwab's comment about conservation being opportunistic, but it's also kind of a long process many times. So I'm hoping you could answer that for me.
Yeah, I think conservation conversations have been going on for quite some time up there. We've been working on the project itself for about 2.5 years. So with an anticipated project closing date in early next year, it'll be about 3 years from start to finish in terms of how long we've worked on it.
Sure, you bet.
Thanks. And then I don't know if maybe this is even for the commissioners, since I think when the interlocal, after the bond passed in 2018 and the interlocal was negotiated and the boundaries of the donut, I call it the donut, around who was taking care of what, when was that negotiated? Was that negotiated in 18 as well?
I don't know offhand. I'm assuming, well, it looks like we do know someone who does have that answer. No.
Yes, thank you, a little high. Yeah, so the 2018 open space bond was obviously passed in November of 2018, and then the interlocal agreement was negotiated. I think it was signed in maybe April or May of 2020. And then that was obviously a separate interlocal agreement from the one pertaining to the 2006 open space bond, which was specific to that bond. Does that answer your question?
It does, thank you.
Great.
Do you mind if I have one more question?
Go right ahead.
I know there's some, and this is actually for Zach, I think. Just for, I know the answers to some of these questions, but I think it's important that they're on the record. When OSAC is, I mean, this property is obviously further out from the center of Missoula than most of the properties we see, but it is still in what was negotiated in that interlocal. Could you maybe speak a little more of how the OSAC looks at the interlocal as they're looking, and how they use that as their guideline when they're assessing projects that come in? Because I know we have some projects that don't make it this far and some that do, and I'm just hoping you can give us some more information about that.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think, excuse me, first of all, I think OSAC mainly prioritizes projects based on the open space plan. That's really, per city ordinance, that's really where they look. And in the open space plan and in the interlocal, they both mention that planning boundary, the Missoula planning boundary. And I think they do have a lot of discussion about where projects lie within the boundary, and they have a lot of discussion about city and county partnership on those projects. This project is within the open space area. It's right on the boundary. And I think with this project in particular, the fact that it's such large acreage and there's a high cost, high value, I think they were very supportive of the project because the county has been partnering and is willing to split those costs. The likelihood of that much acreage being available closer to town is very, very low, right? There's not opportunities within the municipal boundaries or within the growth policy boundary for that kind of acreage. And so I think that's why OSAC was so supportive of this project, is it's large acreage, big bang for the buck, only 13% requested funding with multiple pools of leveraged funding and a large amount of leveraged funding.
Thanks, I appreciate that. I think that kind of clarifies that we have partners in the community and we have organizations that are OSAC working underneath an agreement that we put in place a long time ago. So that's kind of where my questions were going. Thanks.
Okay, you bet. Councillor Campbell.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you for the presentation. I'm just wondering, from a community access standpoint, should this parcel be acquired, to what extent will the general public have equitable access to that open space so that they may enjoy these scenic views and vistas?
Yeah, again, there isn't an explicit public access component to the project, but that doesn't necessarily preclude access from happening in the future. So it will preserve that open space for members, those views and vistas of members throughout the city and the valley, and then just keeps it as open space for any potential projects in the future.
Thank you. And one more, if I may.
Sure, you bet. Go ahead.
This may be for Zach. I'm just curious. The city currently is looking at allocating some open space bond money, or at least we're debating utilizing open space bond money for a project that's going on the north side right now. This is the same pool of money, correct?
Correct, yes. They're both the 2018 Open Space Bond Fund.
Okay. Thank you. No further.
Okay, thank you for your questions.
Do you care if I just
Not at all. Go right ahead.
mention that it's interesting because the 2018 Open Space Bond does allow for a lot of flexibility. So anything from a developed park space to purchasing trail corridor to purchasing, conservation easements or acquiring large tracts of open space land are all eligible. There's also a capital improvements eligibility. So the Clark Fork River Restoration and Access Project was also an eligible project the council approved. So just so you know, there's a lot of flexibility within this open space bond.
Thanks for that additional context. Appreciate that. Councillor Jones.
Thanks. Thanks for all the great information, and there's so much to like about this project, so I'm really excited. I did just have a couple questions about the mechanics of a conservation easement. Just my understanding, this is a family-held land that's an agricultural operation, and it can pass down through the generations, but if at some point people want to not be the owners anymore, how does that work with conservation easement? How does it change hands? And then my second question, because it's probably linked, is if in the long run, based on the values and the goals of this acquisition, having it remain open to wildlife and all of this, how is that ensured over the decades and decades ahead of us to make sure that actually that's happening, especially if it changes hands with people who may have a different vision?
Yeah, thanks. Good questions. In terms of property changing hands, you know, it is still private property, so it is bought and sold just as private property it is. However, it is subject to the terms of the easement. So the new property owner would still have to follow the same legally binding document that is laid forth between the landowner and the land trust. We as a land trust have the responsibility of going out and monitoring these properties every year. We visit all of our properties on an annual basis to make sure that the terms of the conservation values are being upheld by the landowners. And we have seen a lot of land pass through different hands in more recently. And so, you know, we go out and talk to new landowners, educate them about the document that they are bound to, and go out and monitor those perpetually into the future. Yep.
All right, you bet. Thank you. And Councilor Becerra.
Thanks. I have a couple of questions. I think I know the answer, but as Ms. Cheryl mentioned, I think it's important for the public to know this. So there's no public access to this piece of property, but you said that that could be at some point a possibility. Who makes that determination and who initiates?
Yeah, that's a landowner decision at the time. And so they would contact the land trust at that point, and we determine what kind of public access that would include and work through them. We're working on a similar issue in the North Hills Allied Waste easement right now that originally didn't have public access, but we are renegotiating the terms of that easement to provide a trail system through there right now. So.
Thank you. My next question, I think, is for Zach. It's mentioned that conversations about this property with Five Valleys started about 2.5 years ago. When did this come before OSAC? When did that process begin?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I'm trying to access the memory bank here. But most of the time, our processes take about 4 to 6 months to go through OSAC. And we had a couple of months where we were kind of working through, or there was some details being worked through on the easement. And so I would assume, or I would estimate about 8 months, but I think we knew about the project about a year ago. Five Valleys has been very, forward with the project with us, and I think it's been about a year total.
Okay. And then last question I have is, after, say this passes and we spend money on this, how much would we have left in our acquisition fund?
That is a great question. We've got about, I believe, $3.5 million out of the $7.5 million city administered funds pot left currently, and so this at 344,000, would be about 1.2, give or take. And we've also got other projects coming up, as you know, to the sum of about, over $500,000, and then some other ones coming up as well, which gets us probably close to that $2 million range. I believe most of that is in the trails pot of money. That again, these pots of money per the interlocal are not binding. There's something that can be moved around as needed, but that's generally what I think we're just over. I think around $2.5 million is what would be left after this and some other upcoming projects.
In the acquisition fund specifically?
Acquisition fund specifically, this would actually be, yes, thank you for clarifying that. This would be, this would take acquisition funds down to, a couple $100,000. Okay. But again, those are fluid. those categories and those amounts can be moved around as needed.
Yeah, thank you.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you for your questions. Are there any other questions from commissioners? Please, Commissioner Slotnick.
Thanks. This is for Zach or Kaylee. I imagine you guys don't have quick, easy access to a map that shows the Missoula planning region. If you do, that's great. But if not, just maybe you do. If Zach, you got it. That's great. I'd just love to see a contrast between city limits and the Missoula planning region, because sometimes those are confused. Also, we heard from y'all the words acquisition, and I just want to make sure for the public listening, we're talking about acquiring a conservation easement, not buying land. This isn't fee title, this is acquiring an easement. I also heard a lot about public access, and that's fantastic. Also want to note in the language of the bond, agriculture is right there, not agriculture that the city or county owns the land, or agriculture where the public is invited to participate, but preserving working lands. And the way to preserve working lands is, in this context, through a conservation easement. So this isn't an anomalous. In fact, most of the county work that we do around open space is helping to purchase conservation easements on private land. But enough of that soliloquy. If you could show the maps, that'd be great.
Yeah, so I have the map up of the open space, the urban open space planning boundary. And the municipal boundary is not on here, but you can imagine that it's obviously a lot smaller down in the valley bottom. And so this project really is kind of on the edge of that, but it is within a cornerstone per the open space plan. And of course, I'd invite Kaylee or Derek to comment as well on this as needed. But you're right, conservation easements are a very cost-effective way to protect land. You're only acquiring a portion of the property value when you're buying those easements, so it really stretches your dollars a lot further than if you were to acquire. If we were to acquire all the lands in agriculture that were, or in conservation that we're trying to without them being conservation easements, our money would be gone. You know, it's a very cost-effective way to do that, and a way to stretch the dollars out. And you're right, they're not, you know, typically conservation easements don't have public access, and the whole point of the easement is to allow the private property owner to retain ownership, to be able to continue to farm or do whatever activity falls within those conservation values. And as we vet these projects through the open space bond fund lens, if you will, we always look at public benefit, and public benefit can come in a lot of different ways. It doesn't have to be public access. It can be protecting water quality for downstream users. It can be protecting wildlife habitat or view sheds. Working agriculture in this case, and food security is one of those things we really look at related to agriculture and benefits to city residents, and of course the county, I'm sure, vets that similarly. Any other comments, Haley or Derek? Okay. Thanks.
All right, great. Thank you very much. Any other questions from council or from commissioners? All right, not seeing any. Then that wraps up our questions portion. What we'll do is we'll now ask both city council and commissioners to make a motion, and then that will open up the public hearing. So I will turn first to President Cheryl for the motion from city council.
Okay, I didn't know if I was supposed to do it.
Oh, I'm sorry. This is my apologies. This goes to the Conservation and Lands Chair, Council Member Jennifer Savage. Sorry about that. Thank you very much.
No worries at all. Okay, so I move that we adopt a resolution authorizing expenditure of up to $344,000 of open space bond funds toward the acquisition of a conservation easement on the Enderlin property consisting of 1,667 acres to be held by Five Valleys Land Trust as presented. I think that's all. Is that? Do I need to read the rest of this? Motion following the hearing, approve the expenditure of up to $3,400 of open space bond funds towards the acquisition of a conservation easement on the Enderlin property consisting of 1,667 acres to be held by Five Valleys Land Trust.
Thank you very much, Councilor Savage. Appreciate that. Okay, so City Council's motion is on the floor, and then I'll turn it over to Chair Strohmeyer, please.
Okay, our procedure is slightly different than the city's, but we require a motion and a second. So the motion is to adopt the resolution.
I'll second that.
Is that your motion?
That's my motion.
Oh, okay. Juanita, are you out there?
I will second that.
Okay, there we go.
Okay, excellent. So both motions are on the floor. This then opens the public hearing. We welcome members of the public to come on up and please give public comment related to this agenda item. We do limit our public comments to 3 minutes. When you come up to the microphone, if you'll identify your name, please, for the record. And anybody that wishes to speak to this agenda item, come on up now. We'll start with folks in the room.
Good morning. I'm Bert Lindler, and I like to refer to myself as the North Hills Elk, Bear, and Weed Volunteer, self-appointed. Now, it's been a lot longer than 2.5 years ago that I was called and asked to help with a wildlife-friendly fencing project. So I was told it was up in the Evero area, and I went and visited with the landowner, who turned out to be Rory Enderlin, and had a very pleasant 5 years of building fence after that. Had about 30 or 40 volunteers at various times. So when I think about this project, I think about the work that those volunteers did, knowing they had no right to be on Rory's private ranch. They were on the public land, they were on the Lolo National Forest, yet they were working for his benefit. So why was that? That was because they realized that that ranch was a critical part of wildlife habitat in that area, and that the public lands adjoining the Enderlin Ranch are greatly enriched by the ranch's open nature. If you care to drive up Enderlin Lane someday, you'll go through an area with a lot of different types of development. You'll see a trailer over here and a mansion over there and a little thing over here, and then pretty quick you're going to see some railroad tracks, and after that you're not going to see much. And so if I'm an elk or a bear or a grizzly, I very much value that those lands in perpetuity are going to stay open, as will the National Forest lands just beyond, as will the reservation lands just beyond, as will Glacier Park just beyond. So Vital Ground, which is a land conservancy particularly interested in preserving connectivity for grizzly bears, just acquired, I believe, 80 acres or 120 acres, a relatively small parcel in Evero Canyon. And they bought that parcel because it connects protected open space where the Enderlins are and protected open space just on the other side of Highway 93 that's held by the Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation as an easement. So this is a really valuable easement, and it's going to benefit the public, whether they're on the Lolo Forest adjoining, enjoying the wildlife that started on their Enderlin Ranch, or whether they're just looking. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lindner. Other members of the public wishing to make comment?
Mayor, council members, commissioners, it's a real privilege to get to stand here in front of you. My name is Eric Greenwell, and I'm a senior connectivity specialist with the Yellowstone to Yukon Conservation Initiative. So when you're looking at Derek's budget and the line item of $300,000, we're supporting this project in that amount. And if you'll indulge me for a few minutes, I want to zoom out a little bit and talk about the greater landscape. I know Derek talked about a network of connected open space. Bert just so eloquently talked about sort of from Glacier on. That's sort of the landscape scale I want to talk to you about, and that's why I'm here, and that's why Y2Y is supporting this project. Our mission is to connect and protect habitat from the Yukon all the way to Yellowstone, so that people and nature can thrive. And so to do that, we have to work with partners on the ground in communities like this one to protect really important corridors. And we have a really high bar for what that means to be a corridor. We love models that show us where animals are moving, but really we rely on wildlife biologists and folks who have collars on animals so we know exactly where they're moving. And then we make decisions and determinations of where to support projects. And these are very focused and they're very important, so much so that there's only about 24 of these corridors that we are looking at from the Yukon Territory all the way to Yellowstone National Park. This property sits right in the middle of one of those corridors. And we're not only investing in this project, Bert just mentioned that Vital Ground purchased, it's a 55-acre property over the hill. They did that with funding from Y2Y and Heart of the Rockies to make that happen. We believe that in order for wildlife to thrive in this region, from the Yellowstone or from the Yukon all the way to the Yellowstone, one of the most intact and biologically diverse ecoregions in the world, and that's no exaggeration, we need to protect corridors like this to keep wildlife moving between these large pieces of habitat. And we rely on partners like Five Valleys Land Trust and great landowners like Rory and his family to do it, because a lot of those corridors that are at risk sit in those valley bottoms where there's agricultural land. And we have great partners in those landowners who are doing things like protecting their property and also making it permeable to wildlife in addition to running their operations. So, we talked a lot about, Whitney talked a lot about making strategic decisions, and this is one that we believe is a very strategic decision in terms of keeping the culture of this place and the wildlife of this place intact and able to move. I believe people are moving here in droves. Census tells us that Idaho and Montana are two of the fastest growing states. And they're doing so because of attributes like wildlife and biodiversity in this beautiful landscape. And so we need to make strategic investments, and that's what we're doing in this project. So thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Do I have it right, Mr. Greenell?
Greenwell, thank you.
Greenwell. Thank you very much, Mr. Greenwell. Other members of the public, come on up.
Hello, I'm Bart Morris. I own Oxbow Cattle Company with my wife, Wendy, and what I wanted to kind of give you guys, and we're talking a lot about conceptual and what this conservation easement will do. Well, I wanted to give you guys an idea of what conservation easements are currently doing in the Missoula Valley. We're a conservation easement holder out on Miller Creek. We run on about 10,000 acres. We raise grass-fed, grass-finished beef. It all goes directly back to the community of Missoula. And we wouldn't be able to do it without these 10,000 acres. Of the 10,000 acres, 8,500 of the acres are all under conservation easement. Those lands would not be there for me to be a first-generation rancher on had they not had the foresight a while ago to put these lands in conservation. So, and then there's like questions about public access. There is no public access written into these conservation easements. They're under Five Valleys Land Trust and they're under Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation. But two of our land, as well as the Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation conservation easement, both those lands are enrolled in block management program allowing public access. Through our business, we bring out folks out of the community. We bring the university out there every year. I just had a call this morning from a professor going to bring a class out this spring. So there's a lot of public access in different ways that you can't even foresee in the future on these lands. But you won't have that opportunity if these lands aren't conserved. Along with that, there's a lot of talk about wildlife. Our lands, we put our lands under an Audubon certification, such as bird-friendly grazing. And the Montana Audubon folks came out to our place, which includes these other conservation easements, and they documented more species on these places, more different species on these places than any other place in Montana that they certify. So it speaks real highly to this valley and the biodiversity there. And then the next thing is like talking about transfer of ownership. One of the places, it's about 1,200 acres that we lease. It's transferred ownership now once. The new landowner from Las Vegas came in. He can do some development on it, but it's very limited. and he has opened his door and let us continue to graze this and produce local food for the people of Missoula. So it's really vital that these places stay open, and there's a lot of positives that come that you can't even foresee. Like when these folks preserve these lands that we're now running on, such as the Grant Creek Ranch of Denny Washington's, the Sapphire Ranch of Mark Reiling's, they weren't thinking that we were going to be producing local, nutrient-dense food for the community, but that's what these places are doing. So just want to put that out there.
Thank you very much for your comments, Mr. Morris. Other members of the public that wish to speak today?
Andrea. Yeah, I have to go, unfortunately.
Okay.
Come on up, sir. You can come on up. Yeah, sadly, I have to leave to another engagement, but thankfully with 3 commissioners, you still have a quorum with just 2. So Commissioner Slotnick will chair in my stead, and suffice it to say, I'm fully supportive of this proposal. This is an excellent use of open space bond money and complies with and aligns with the interlocal. So thanks to everyone who helped work on this.
Thank you, Commissioner Strohmeyer. See you next time. Okay. Back to public comment. Thank you.
Yes, it's Robert Dunlop here in Missoula. Wish to remind the county commissioners and the city council, just because you have the authorization to spend money, or just because you have the money, doesn't mean you're required to spend the money. You'll never get these taxes down until you start controlling your spending. I have nothing against these people that want to put a conservation easement on that property. I'm an outdoorsman. I love the outdoors. If I want to see a bear, I go to Greeno Park. If I want to see deer, I look in my backyard. But I'm definitely against you spending public money on property that the taxpayers do not have access to. And one of the pictures that came through to me from a city email on this particular property, it shows a road going into the property, and off to the left on a fence post is a sign posted. That's what the sign says. So my belief is no public money without public access. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Mr. Dunlop. Other members of the public wishing to make comment today?
Hi, thanks for having me. I'm Jennifer Boyer. I grew up in Polson, and since I was 15 years old, I have been driving that corridor from Polson to Missoula. I'm sorry to say that's like 40 years. Over the past 10 of those 40 years, the expansion rate in that valley just beyond the Y has grown exponentially. If you haven't driven that as much as I have, it's obvious, and expected, and okay. But without mindful planning to conserve land for agricultural, wildlife connectivity, recreation, and our beautiful open views, we lose what we all appreciate about living here and the reason of so many people want to move here. As a Ward 1 constituent and a lifelong resident of the Missoula and Flathead Valleys, I've come today to ask you to support your Missoula voters, that we have already passed this so you can support it. We, your constituents, passed the open space bond. Yes, Missoula faces many other issues. It always has, it always will. This money is dedicated to this intended purpose of securing open space. It will not fix other issues, but what it will do is what it is intended to do: increase protected open space and access as Missoula expands. I'd like to remind you that this project has unanimous support of OSAC and the county's OLC. This really is the perfect opportunity to show unity and work together. Thank you for your consideration in supporting this investment as part of the urban growth strategy that will keep the character and quality of Missoula that we all appreciate about living here as we continue to expand and grow. Thank you for all you do for our city. Thank you all you do for our county. Your time is appreciated and your expertise respected.
Thank you very much for your comments, Ms. Boyer. Other members of the public, come on up.
I am Ron Slater. I'm a member of the Missoula County Open Land Citizen Advisory Committee. There's not much more I can add that staff and Derek has already talked about. It is a beautiful parcel. It is still an active agricultural farm. It is providing wildlife habitat and winter range for deer and elk. I don't know about as far as a corridor from Yukon to Yellowstone, but it is very vital out there at the Y that is rapidly growing into a residential area. Therefore, the Open Land Citizen Advisory Committee would like to recommend to the county commissioners that they approve up to $344,000 for the acquisition of a conservation easement on the Inderland property. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Slayer. Thank you for your public service as well. Any other members of the public wishing to make comment on this agenda item? Not seeing any in the room, I want to turn it over to folks that are online and see if there's any members of the public that wish to make comment there. All right. Not seeing any, then that wraps up our public comment, and the motions have been made. I do want to mention that because this is a business meeting of City Council, we will be taking public comment on items not on the agenda at the end of the meeting. So if there is anything, we'll take those then. I meant to mention that. But we are continuing on with this agenda item. So the motions have been made. I'll now open the floor for council comments and any additional questions, and then Chair Slotnick will have the opportunity to do the same for the commission. All right, so I see some hands raised. We'll start with Councilor Vasika.
Thanks, and I apologize if I missed it. I was reading through the documents and I wanted to thank Mr. Dunlop for bringing it to my attention. Will there be any public access if we do approve this?
Question about public access, who would like to take that?
No, not at this time.
Councilor Vasika, did you hear that response?
Yes, I did. Thank you. That's all my questions.
Okay, absolutely, you bet. And Councilor Sherrill.
I just have a couple of comments, if that's
absolutely
time. You know, these projects are complex, and I think that they require multiple funding sources. And I mean, we see that in all the projects that have happened over the years for conservation in this valley. This project does check all the boxes that are many of the boxes, enough of the boxes for what the voters approved. You know, the bond language that was put out in 18 was very specific, and I know that Zach, that you spoke to that, but you know, I think it's important for us to remember that the voters approved that bond language the way it was written. So that's important to me in voting today. And I do know that some of my colleagues have a little heartburn over a project that is this far outside of where we are and what the area that our constituents, I guess. But I also want to remind everyone that the voters in the entire county approved a bond. And so it was internal workings of how we were going to divide that, how we were going to divide it geographically, how we were going to divide it financially. So this is a county-wide bond, and the whole county is paying for this bond, regardless of how we spend this money and who spends it and what pot it comes out of. We have divided those, but they're really all together. So everyone will be paying for this, including those people in the county that this is closer to, is my point. So as we have heartburn over this being further out of the city, I think that's important to consider. I also know that there are a number of counselors that have expressed maybe doing some reprioritization of the remaining city funds. in the bond, given the tax environment that we are in right now, the growth policy that we are looking at, the required more density in a community that is growing. So I think that is a conversation that we're going to have, but I don't believe that it's a conversation that should be punishing a project that has been in the works for many, many years, and that it's a good project. It has great conservation values. And, you know, when we talk about a community that likes conservation, sometimes that's larger landscape conservation, and in the conservation world, this isn't necessarily large landscape conservation, but it certainly feels like it when we're talking about a valley that has the density and will have the density that we're going to see in the next 20 to 30 years. So for all those reasons, and I appreciate the Inderlands' generosity in this too, and their forward-thinking conservation and all the partners, I'm going to be voting for it.
Thank you for your comments, Councilor Sherrill. Councilor Jones.
First of all, I want to say thank you to Five Valleys for all of the work that's gone into this. It's a great project to bring in front of us, and the huge amount of leveraged funds is reflective, I think, of the work that's gone into this. I wanted to thank city staff and county staff for all of the work, and also the property owners for leaning in on this and envisioning the future of Missoula. To me, this is a really good project because it's a significant tract of land. It's really strategically located. There are wildlife corridor issues, which it helps with in the long run. And then the fact that it's been leveraged, the funds have been leveraged so much, all of that to me makes for a really, really good project. So I'm happy to vote for it today. We're living in an era in which taxes keep going up, and we are also doing code reform for the city, and we're seeing not only more people coming here, but we're going to have to build more densely. So I think we do need to have that conversation of probably reprioritizing how we spend the rest of our open space dollars. I know there's a couple other small projects in the works that are coming through, but I do think we're going to have to be looking at public access for areas close to Missoula where we're building more densely so folks can have that green space. So I just wanted to put that out there. I think we need to start, sometimes the ship has to be turned in a little bit of a direction, and to me it needs to be done thoughtfully as we work through it. And for now, this is a great project, so I want this to go through. I also wanted to say that I don't think all areas should have public access because humans have a big impact in areas. So sometimes we need to carve those out and not have public access. I will also point out that on my Facebook feed, I have Oxbow Cattle Company, and I get to see all sorts of great videos of the cows coming in and the cows coming out and all sorts of wonderful stuff. And I had the pleasure of going on a field trip there before we did that acquisition. But being able to see those pictures, I love that. So thank you for doing that, first of all, Mr. Morris. I also have the MPG Ranch feed, their Facebook. I follow them on my Facebook, and it's getting to see the wildlife and what happens down at MPG Ranch is also wonderful. I don't need to go there, and I don't want to go there because I don't think we should always have folks tromping around in places. There's a lot of science to how they make Glacier Park and Yellowstone work so that the wildlife have their places and the humans have their places. So I just wanted to acknowledge that. I don't know if you ever set up any bird cameras or wildlife cameras on your place, but it would be great to see that. But in the meantime, I'm happy to vote for this. I do think we need to thoughtfully think out what the next few years will look like in terms of acquisitions for Missoula. And I think that's all I have. So thanks for coming down today.
Thank you, Councilor Jones. And Councilor Savage.
Thank you. I wanted to also say thank you to staff and to Five Valleys. I know you guys have been working on this for a very long time, and particularly thank you to Zach because he walks me through lots of details over and over again when I have questions as the chair of the Parks Conservation Committee. And with that, I guess I would just say that I we had a project come before us a little while back, and it was a project that was much closer in, for which we did not have a county split. That is when, as the chair of the Parks and Climate and Conservation Committee, I started to hear about the heartburn that other councilors were having about some of these different projects. And I think it sort of went a little like, we agreed to this interlocal. The interlocal was a minute ago. A lot of things have changed. We are looking at a land use plan here at the city that is calling for a lot of density, a lot of building inward. That might be different than what we were looking at in 2018 or 2020 when the interlocal was the agreement. I also heard, just sort of anecdotally, that some councilors were frustrated that we as the city were taking on the burden of a project that was super close to town and that we were not getting any county support with that, and that we are looking at a project that is actually at the boundary of this interlocal agreement, and that we are coming in with half of the funding. Half of the open space funding. So I only share that because I think it is relevant. I really appreciate Ms. Boyer's comments. When I first moved here, my husband and I bought a house in Arlee, and I have driven that road approximately 2 billion times. I will drive it again today. I know how much that Y area is changing and is also poised to change. I also appreciate that this family is willing to enter into a conservation easement and give us some of that connection that some people spoke about. I'm voting for this today, but I am one of the people that would like to see a little bit of a prioritization of the rest of our city funds sort of start to look inward, especially as our land use plan is having us do that as well. So as we move forward, like projects that are this far out, I think are likely to have more scrutiny with this body and perhaps with OSAC as well. So I just call that out, but I do appreciate everyone coming down and bringing this forward and all of the work that you have put into it. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Councillor Savage. And Councillor Campbell.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Obviously, the open space bond money was put there for purposes such as what we're debating here today. But I have some philosophical and practical concerns with this particular proposal. Philosophically, I am concerned about the relative remoteness of this particular parcel in relation to the city of Missoula and its planning boundary. I just pulled up here minutes ago our growth policy for 2045 and the sphere of influence that it encompasses within the Missoula Valley, and this parcel is well outside of even that growth policy or annexation plan going forward for the next 20 years. So it's not even really within the sphere of influence that's going to be proposed here in the next couple months with our growth policy. So that's a concern. I think philosophically as well, I think my feeling is when folks within the city limits at least pass this bond, you know, they were doing it with the intent that it would foster more recreational opportunities, more public access opportunities, and yes, even more farmland preservation within the area of sphere of influence of the city of Missoula. Certainly you look at growth going out towards Mullen, growth that may occur further west of here on Reserve Street. You know, there's farmlands there that eventually, you know, we're going to want to prioritize and protect. And, but through it all, though, you know, we have a land use policy in place that encompasses those areas. And, you know, we're going to look through our growth policy to, you know, try to take in consideration how urban growth and urban sprawl occurs down those areas. And certainly the open space bond money is a tool that we could utilize to have preservation of those lands as we move forward, but that's all within the influence of our land use policy and planning area and future annexation within the city of Missoula. And this particular parcel is, again, well outside of that particular planning area. You know, I think of, you know, was brought up about a recent, you know, acquisition that the city had west of town here out on third with Corner Farm, and certainly I had strong opinions about that purchase. Curiously, there was no county involvement with that purchase. Very curiously, but at the very least, though, you know, that land that's out there is within the sphere of influence of growth for the city of Missoula going forward. So at least it had that going for us with preservation of farmland. And I don't see that taking place here with what's being proposed with Inderland. From a practical standpoint, you know, I've heard from my colleagues a number of times already about the need to, you know, after today going forward, and, you know, we really need to focus inward with, you know, where we spend our remaining open space bond monies, and the fact that there is just a finite amount of that money available. It's going to shrink. We just had a presentation here last week about an ask of upwards of $500,000 or more for purchase of open space that would be available. You know, we look at the criteria for utilization, for enjoyment of residents within the city, for access, for equitable access for properties. And to me, I think it's a conversation that needs to happen right now, not after the vote, not at some later date or some later time, make it a priority at some later. That's a priority that needs to be addressed right here, right now, because going forward, I mean, things are going to get tougher in terms of, you know, how we allocate dollars for purchase of open space within the sphere of influence of the city of Missoula. So for those reasons, and for the fact that, you know, I think although it's a great endeavor to have, you know, that set aside up there for preservation of wildlife habitat, and my concerns of lack of public access to that property up there, and for the practicality of, you know, the finite amount of money that we have available here within the city right now for future open space purchases in and around the city of Missoula, I'm not going to be in support of this today. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Councillor Campbell, and Councillor Farmer.
Yeah, thank you. I won't take too much time because I don't think I have anything to say that hasn't probably already been said. But I do want to just say quickly thank you to the Inderland family for your generous easement opportunity, and I think it's amazing. And thank you to Five Valleys for reaching out to the tribe. I know that was a really important piece to me. Being so close to the tribal boundary, I think it's great to know that they do support this. I think I've been one of those colleagues that has a little bit of heartburn on this easement, knowing that, you know, it is pretty far out from city limits and it doesn't have public access. But I think I can confidently look at my constituents in their eyes and say that they do benefit from this on a broader scale. You know, I think as someone who does manage public land, I think that this is going to have a multiplication of positive impact, you know, other public land benefits from this corridor as well. So for those reasons, I will be in support of it. And I do think moving forward, you know, like we've said, I would like to see more of the open space bond funds be used more internally, especially in some of the neighborhoods that I represent that don't have as much access to a park, right? So public space isn't even an option for a lot of them. So I would like to use some of those funds for a little bit more immediate access moving forward. But I am in favor of this, and thank you for the presentation.
Thank you for your comments, Councillor Farmer, and Councillor Becerra.
Thank you. I think my colleagues have spoken to where I stand on this. I do want to say thank you to everyone who's been collaborating on this easement acquisition. I do think that it would be significantly more expensive. It is more expensive, so the potential contribution from the city, it's a lot of bang for the buck, if you think of it that way. I am one of those people with a lot of heartburn about this, and I have been thinking about it really hard for a long time since we learned about it. I will not sacrifice this wonderful project because we have a policy that, in my belief, is no longer aligning with some of the priorities that we have as a community. We have policies underway that encourage substantial development in the urban core. Many pieces of property within that urban core are being converted to housing, creating a high demand and a need for publicly accessible land. The cost of housing has increased, property taxes have increased, and our population will continue to increase. So I do think that we need to work on better aligning our policies so that we can do the most for our community. Sometimes I think knowing that there's a piece of land out there undeveloped with the beautiful qualities of this property is good for the soul. But sometimes that's not enough for people who live in the urban core with very little access to open space. So from an equity standpoint, I think it is important that we start thinking about how we prioritize the very little bit of money that we have left in our funds. I mean, it's a lot of money, but when you think about the cost of land within the urban core, it's not. So I think we do need to start looking at aligning our priorities a little bit better for the betterment of the community. But I will be in support of this. I do think that there's been a lot of work already done, a lot of collaboration. But I do think that this is one of those situations that has made me think really hard about how we spend the remaining funds that we have in our open space bond. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Becerra. Councilor Vasica.
Thank you, and thank you for letting me gather my thoughts before I made my comments. I came into this really wanting to vote yes, especially because I believe that the open space bonds should be used for open space. And I felt, especially going against Marshall Mountain last year so vocally, I really wanted to come at this and with an open mind. But with the public comment and with Mr. Campbell's comments, I'm uncomfortable with not having public access with this and it being so far out of the city. We do have limited funds. The open space bonds are technically allowed to be used for a purchase like this, but I believe, and in my capacity as a counselor, I'm allowed to use them for public access. And since this does not have public access, I would prefer to use the remaining of our limited funds for this so that everybody can use the tax dollars that they are giving to open access to be used for open access. So I'm uncomfortably going to be against this, but I really do appreciate the family coming forward. And I am open to having my mind changed over the weekend, but when I'm not fully on board with something, I tend to go the conservative route and vote against it. So right now, I'm not fully on board. So I'm going to be, unfortunately, not in support of it today.
Thank you for your comments, Councilor Vasica. Councilor Jordan.
Yeah, thank you. I just want to thank the staff for the presentation and all of the hard work that's gone into making sure that something like this can happen. I am really concerned about setting land aside, particularly given the results of our state election, where there's a big move to start privatizing really beautiful swaths of land. And so I see this as a step in the right direction to make sure that we preserve parts of Montana from ever being fully developed. I am actually, like a lot of my colleagues, really uncomfortable with the fact that we're using public funds for something that won't have public access. And I do hope that, given what we've heard, that becomes something we talk about in the future. But I am all for this. I appreciate all the hard work that has gone into it. Definitely agree with my colleagues that I would like to see our existing funds go to projects that do allow for more public access. But yeah, I think we need to be setting land aside at rates as fast as possible, given growth and the fact that public lands are getting snapped up and being privatized forever and in perpetuity. So I think this is a great project. I just wish it did have public access. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jordan. Councillor Nugent.
Thank you, Mayor Davis. I would just echo everything Ms. Jordan said. I had my hand up before she started speaking, and I think that she actually nailed my thoughts, which is great. I do want to stress to my colleagues, I agree with many of you who are talking about kind of the need to, moving forward as we're evaluating projects from start to finish, look a little bit more inwards at kind of the pressure we're facing and how this world has changed since 2018. But I do think it's important to answer the comments of a couple of my colleagues. We don't get to rewrite history on what the voters voted for in 2018. And the voters in 2018 voted for an open space bond that specifically included protecting agriculture land in the county. And if that hadn't been part of it, there really isn't a lot of agricultural land to protect in the city, in the heart of the city. I know there's some as we grow out. So that includes this kind of donut or bubble or whatever we want to call it that we're in, and this is how we've ended up here. So I will be supporting this today specifically because I was part of that conversation in 2018, and specifically I was part of that conversation from the housing angle and how we needed to balance this pressure of development and this pressure of this community growing and lands being purchased and bought up with trying to protect some spaces. And protecting spaces, I absolutely do believe whenever possible should include access. And I think the staff's done a good job, and I think we've talked about it, of this bond has done a great job of doing a lot of things that have protected access. We've opened new trails in the hills around us. We've negotiated easements in the Rattlesnake. We have done a lot to protect access, but I think that it is incorrect to say that when people were voting for this, they didn't also understand that it was to protect habitats and land and view sheds and things like that as well. And so I think it's important, especially because these are the rules that we have set forth. This is what our staffs at the city and the county have been working on, that we need to move forward with this as is. And I look forward to the discussion on how we use the remainder of our money moving forward, but I will be supporting this.
Thank you for your comments, Councillor Nugent. That looks like it wraps up our council comments, but I would like to hand it over to Chair Slotnick for commissioner comments.
Juan, are you still frozen? I just got a text from Juan that said this meeting was frozen for her.
Okay.
And then I just sent it again, and now I could hear Nugent, so
great.
We're back.
Thanks.
Although my camera doesn't seem to be allowing me to camera.
Can I do a comment?
Can you share something? I'm sorry.
Yes. Can I make a comment?
Oh, please.
Okay, great.
Absolutely.
So
please, your time.
Much in the way that Councillor Nugent said, you echoed Councillor Jordan. I'm going to echo some of what you said. And I believe, Councillor Campbell, that when people voted on this, they read the ballot language. I think people are pretty sharp. They read the ballot language, they vote yes or no. That's what I believe. People voted for this, and preserving of ag land was in there. This, from a county standpoint, and I believe from ballot language standpoint, is this project just fully consistent with what people voted for? And I appreciate all of you with heartburn and the change in context and Missoula's growth, and we need to look at things in a new and different way, and looking out for the city, I totally get that. From our standpoint, this project is completely consistent with the ballot language. It has a fantastic, diverse funding stack. It checks every box. I'm not going to enthusiastically support it. Other comment I want to make is just a little bit of myth busting, where I've heard from folks all around this room, well, if we're spending money, then taxes go up. That's not how it works. It's a great myth, but it's not how it works. A full 2/3 of the money the county spends does not come from local property taxes. If you see something the county is doing and they're spending money, that does not mean that property taxes go up. The two things are separate. In fact, in our last reappraisal year, if we had raised taxes by 0, your taxes still would have gone up. The equation that the Department of Revenue and legislature use to determine the value of a person's property has a far greater impact than spending on your ultimate property tax liability. I know that's probably too weedy and boring for anybody right now, but this is a myth we really need to call out. Thanks.
Thank you for your comments. Appreciate that. And how about you, Commissioner Vero? Do you wish to speak?
Yeah, I've been having problems with this meeting in and out. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. And I have completely agree with Commissioner Slotnick, and yes, absolutely understand and respect the concerns have been mentioned. But this is a unique opportunity. Projects like these take a lot of time, takes a long time for landowners to be ready to enter into something like this. It's a unique property. So I do truly believe that this is an excellent example of public benefit and protecting those ecosystem services and habitat connectivity and working agriculture. And I couldn't say it any better than Bart Morris has already said. So yes, I'm going to enthusiastically vote to support this project.
Thanks, Juanita. The mayor needed to step out to get some water, but she'll be right back. So I'm going to, at this point, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to the county commissioners to do whatever their process is for a vote, and then the council will vote after.
Thanks a lot. So we have a motion on the floor. Do we have any public comment that hasn't yet happened before we take this vote? Okay, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right. Thanks.
Okay, yours is really fast. Okay, we've already done
We're a nimble government.
You are, and I appreciate that, especially when you've only got two. That's super fast. Okay, we're going to go ahead and do a roll call vote of council, please.
All right, beginning with Becerra.
Yes.
Campbell.
No.
Farmer.
Yes.
Jones.
Yes.
Jordan.
Yes.
Nugent.
Yes.
Savage.
Yes.
Cheryl.
Yes.
And Vasika.
No.
And I got everyone who came in late. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. You got it.
Okay. All right. And that does pass.
Are you taking over now?
I am. Thank you. Thank you very much. Appreciate that, President Cheryl. Sorry, everybody. I think we're all managing what this time of the year has, and I'm healthy, but there's every now and again a little frog in my throat. It takes over the voice box. So we need to turn it over now to Board of County Commissioners. Nope, did they vote already? Okay, sorry about that. Thank you. So it sounds like we have made it through our roll call vote and voice vote for this item. Is that correct? And then this item passes. Okay. Thank you again for your patience. Sorry about the interruption. I also want to pass along my appreciation to city and county staff for the work that you have done, our partners with Five Valleys Land Trust, and others who have worked for many years on conservation projects in and around the city of Missoula and around our valley. I want to thank the Inderland family and the ranch for offering this conservation opportunity and the generational impact that this will have. As Mr. Morris articulated with his ranch, there are benefits sometimes tangentially or outside of our everyday engagement that that come along with investments like this. And I just want to also extend my appreciation to City Council and commissioners for the dialogue around the changing dynamics that we have here in our valley and the opportunity to continue to have a conversation around how we utilize taxpayer-funded bond funds such as the open space bond for how we best achieve the goals that the voters have bestowed upon us. So thank you for a very thoughtful dialogue and public hearing today. Really appreciate everybody's work. Thank you for being here. And I'll go ahead and open up this for public comment on non-agenda items. If anybody wishes to have any public comment on non-agenda items, we'd welcome you to the microphone now. Come on up, hi. Sorry about, let me get your microphone. And Commissioner Slotnick, Thank you so much. I just also wanted to extend congratulations on your successful election. I am sorry I didn't overlook that at the beginning of our meeting, but congratulations. Absolutely. We'll be looking forward to continuing to work together. All right. Sorry about that, ma'am. Please go right ahead.
Thank you. It's really nice to be in a place today with such people that care about the community. It's good for the heart. My name is Carrie Schreiber. I spoke the other evening as a person adjunct to the Southgate Crossing purchase. And Mayor Davis, you spoke of the importance of the connectivity north and south from the area of Brook Street heading up past the mall. And I am focused on that today. There is Paxson Street that has a light that goes through, as well as Dory Street over by Paradise Falls that goes through. And from what I can see, the city would have a choice to either put a street through Schilling behind Bob Ward's right to the daycare, or where the road used to be for the mall that would connect to Eaton, and then that's an easy access over to Dory where there's a light. If we were to do a straight shot to Schilling, there would be huge impacts to the daycare for safety and exhaust. And we're pretty tightly built in there already with the width of the road. And those property owners have been really active and concerned about maintaining our canal, our ditch that runs through there. Going the other direction along the railroad tracks to Eaton, that would give easy access to the Dory light, to me makes a lot more sense. It's going to give a lot more access to that buildable land that goes through there and be a lot safer. If we were to do the access through Schilling to Brooks, that needs some pedestrian safety. We had a pedestrian death there just in the last year, and the Brook Street corridor has prioritized having some sort of a crosswalk in that area, but that hasn't happened yet. And people get wild cutting through streets in that area. Let's see. The land behind Bob Ward's, which faces the daycare, is the only area that Ellen Buchanan said is not buildable, and that's because of the depth of the sawmill debris. She said they went down like 20 feet, and it's just debris. It's not solid enough to build on. Her idea was that maybe a dog park would go into that area, or that access would be a bit of a park. So yeah, I would really encourage being smart about where to put those roads in, and give that neighborhood opinion that we love our canal with. It sounds nicer than a ditch, doesn't it, to call it a canal? And there are like 100 mature trees along it. It's a slow, meandering thing. The daycare used to take the kids on walks along there until there started to be some safety issues with needles and that sort of a thing. We welcome development. We need more going on there. But the treasures that we do have, we want to maintain in those calming areas, will be a great asset for future development for the people that will be living there as well. So just wanted to speak to your question about the north-south connection. And yeah, over on the daycare side, we've always thought that we would have that nature buffer to whatever that development would be. And so to hear MRA speak of wanting to culvert or reroute the ditch, take down all those mature trees, is just heartbreaking us. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your thoughtful comments.
I'm happy to be an asset in this whole process.
Wonderful. Well, we duly noted. Your name is on the list. And I don't know, Ms. Schreiber, if you probably do know that the committee later this afternoon, the Housing, Redevelopment, and Community Programs Committee is meeting as well, and this agenda will be on there as well. All city council serve on all committees, so your comment certainly is well received during this public comment now, but I just wanted to make sure you knew that that was an agenda item on a later committee today. Okay. Thank you very much for your thoughtful comments. Really appreciate that. Other public comments on items not on the agenda? Not seeing any in the room. How about online? And I'm not seeing any online either. Okay, then that wraps up our meeting for this morning. And again, this is our City Council special meeting. I do also just want to mention to folks that it is National Nachos Day, so take advantage of that. And I'll go ahead and then adjourn this meeting at 11:40. Thank you. Don't say that anymore. Oh man, sorry about that. Thank you. No, that's God. Okay. It's like, you know that laryngitis moment where you're like, oh God, this isn't good. I was like, I'm gonna be able to just have a lozenge. It's gonna get nope. Well done. Good done. Wrapped up. Okay. How we doing? Sorry about that.
I appreciate that Dale got you a script.
Yeah.
He forwarded you what I had done previously, but I was like, okay, he actually updated it.
Yeah.
That's more than always happens.
That was awesome. It was great. It was really helpful for me. Thank you.